Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 102 of the Self-Publishing Roundtable, the podcast for indie authors by indie authors, where we discuss today's topics and issues that matter to this business of the self-published author. I am your moderator, Wade Finnegan, and my co-panelists this evening, we've got a full house. We'll start off with Michelle Reed.
Hello.
Xavier Granville.
Hello, internets.
Special moderators, Zach Bohannon.
What's going on?
And really the guy playing the part of Wade tonight is Matt Morris.
That's me. With my guitar.
With his guitar. Our special guest for this evening, the star of the show, is Mr. J. Thorn, horror writer extraordinaire and podcaster and a whole bunch of other cool crap that he's going to talk about. Say hello, James.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for being on. Yeah, so
put like a little like theme music for him. I don't know if you guys can even hear this, but
I'll take that.
That's nice.
I love Led Zeppelin.
Nice, Zach. We don't really have a specific topic that we're going to cover. We're going to talk lots of things about different types of publishing. We're going to talk about a fairly newish project that James has been working on called Dark Arts Theater. It's really, really cool. We might even talk about book formatting if we don't put our audience to sleep with that. But we got so many different things to cover. We got lots of people here, so hopefully the conversation just rolls. As always, please leave your questions, comments live. We love that. We'll try our best to get them on the air. We really do appreciate our live viewers. And of course, at the end of the show, go leave us a review. I'll let Matt say that again later on, and I promise not to cut everybody off this time. My voice is kind of gone tonight, so I probably won't talk very much. So let's see. Where should we start? I think Xavier, since you were kind of thinking you were going to have to host this shenanigan, maybe you could start off with a question tonight.
Sure. Well, I would ask a question, but maybe let's just give Jay a chance to just introduce himself. You could probably shed some light on what all he's accomplished and how long he's been at the indie author career, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I was trying to remember the last time I was on the round table. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Little stain there for you. Nice reference. Yeah, I'm basically a storyteller. I'm really into horror, dark fantasy, heavy metal, and hard rock. That's kind of my thing. I think there's a lot of people out there like me who like sort of the dark literature and also dark and heavy music. So it's kind of who I am. It's who I've always been since the time I was a teenager, and it's kind of the storytelling has kind of taken me on different paths. So I've been I wrote poetry. I was in a heavy metal band that I just left in the past year or so to focus more on my writing, but I was in a heavy metal band for 10 years, and now I'm writing novels, and I'm starting to branch out into other media. So because I don't know no one really knows where this crazy thing's going, and how stories are going to be consumed or told 5 years from now, or maybe even 5 months from now. So what I do know is I love telling stories, and I think the world needs more stories and more ways for people to sort of detach from some of the violent stuff that happens out there and sort of enjoy themselves for a little bit. So that's kind of who I am and what I do.
Cool. I originally got onto you because likewise I had a musician career for a little while and was doing in heavy metal and progressive metal mostly, but I loved how you could make that transition, and that's what I've been trying to do and slowly working at that as well. And kind of following you for what a year or so, like I've noticed that you kind of are a bit of a jack of all trades as far as what all you've taken on, because you do focus on taking that time to do your formatting yourself as well as your marketing yourself. You really are firmly established as an independent author. You are doing the bulk of your work yourself. So I guess maybe the question is, what all are those little things that you find yourself taking on in order to be able to provide all of those things that maybe a brick and mortar publishing and marketing team would provide you? How do you take that responsibility on yourself?
Well, I think I did it out of necessity at first. I think when you first start out as a writer, or you first start out with this idea that you're going to publish something that you want to sell, I think it's really hard to even know what to do. So most of what you end up doing yourself, you do to learn, and so that's kind of I think that's where it came from. So I had an IT background, so I was able to get into the formatting and really. I do most everything myself except for, editing and cover design. I don't do myself. I hire out for that. I'm not a graphic designer, and I can't edit my own work. So, or I shouldn't. I can't edit it. I shouldn't edit it. But everything else, from the marketing, the publishing, the financial stuff, I do handle all that, and I probably do too much of that. I've had a few of my peers tell me I need to get a virtual assistant to help me with some of that logistical stuff, so that I can free more time up for the creative stuff, and I will. It's not a control thing for me. It's just it's a matter of finances. So I don't know. I don't know if that really answers your question or not. But yeah, I end up doing everything myself, and I think the benefit from that, especially early on, is that you learn so much more if you do it yourself as opposed to hiring someone to do it. And then once you do something, like I did cover design, and I totally screwed it up and it was terrible, but then I at least knew what to ask a cover designer, or I knew how to do a design brief, and if I hadn't messed it up the first time, I probably wouldn't have known as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it.
I have a question real quick. Well, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Zach.
Well, no, I was going to say...
You did answer the question. Yeah, that's perfect. Go ahead, Zach.
No, I was just going to say regarding, you kind of mentioned all the different things that you have your toes in as far as your author business. And one thing you brought up that I'm curious about is how much time do you have to spend a month doing accounting stuff? Because I know that you are in like 80 box sets, and you wrote a novel with 9 other people, and I mean, but legitly, like, I mean, that's got to take a lot of time away from writing and stuff. Because I know you handle all that for all those projects. Yes
and no. It does at first until you set up a system. Sean Platt talks about this all the time. Once you get you have to invest a lot of time in setting up a system, and then once you set up a system, and if you're good at it and you have the skills to work your own system, and you can be efficient. So at first, I've honestly lost count. I think I'm managing or involved in like 6 different box sets, probably 35 plus authors, and then the Black Fang Betrayal is myself and 9 other authors. So I'm in contact with 40 to 50 people on a regular basis around the accounting stuff, whether it's sending reports or sending royalty shares, whatever it happens to be. So early on, I had to kind of develop a system for that, set up a spreadsheet, sort of determine when I was going to do it and how I was going to do it, and that took a long time. But now that I have that in place, honestly, it's not too bad. I have sort of like a weekend a month, not the whole weekend, but maybe 4 hours on one weekend a month that I use to do a lot of the accounting and logistical and royalty stuff.
Gotcha. Right. Yeah, because I know it's got to be a lot of work with all the stuff all the different people you work with. So
it is, but in another way though, it's I'm in constant contact with a lot of people, and that's part of the networking thing too. I think if I was sort of really hands off, or if I paid an assistant to do that stuff, I wouldn't be developing the same relationships. And yeah, I don't want to regurgitate some of the same stuff I've said on a million podcasts, because then Richard Brown will skewer me on Facebook. but the truth is, like, I think doing stuff. Just doing stuff, being the person that gets stuff done and not really expecting anything in return, it just does pay off. It's just that simple.
Yeah, that's a great way to get into, just to chime in on that, that's a great way to get into some other box sets with people that are, maybe, I don't want to say out of your league, but in a different kind of sales hemisphere. And, and it's just to offer to do the grunt work for them, because they don't want to do it either, right? So if you're like a fledgling author and you're like trying to put together a horror box set, and you approach Thorn, and you're like, hey, I'll handle all that stuff for you if I can throw my story in there, right?
Well, that's exactly what happened with a number of the authors who I ended up getting into the box sets. And like Joe Conrath is a great example. Like Joe Conrath gets a bazillion emails a day. So I wasn't going to ask him for something. So when I was thinking like, you know what? I'm going to put out a box set. And what I said to Joe was like, all you have to do is send me your file. That's it. I'll take care of everything else. I think it's a whole lot easier than saying like, hey Joe, do you think you could put a box set together? And by the way, can you put my story in it? Like, that's a little harder to ask.
Yeah, and can I get an advance on the royalties too? Thanks. While we're at it.
That'd be great.
All right, who has the next question? Don't have dead air tonight, right?
I got another one. Jay, you have a book out for authors for teaching people how to format their books to ebook format using HTML. What is your problem with Scrivener, sir?
Part of it is my IT background. So I was building websites in the 1990s with Notepad and HTML. So I'll fess up, like I do have that background, and so I'm not intimidated by that. But the reason I haven't gone to Scrivener is because I have to export out of Scrivener to Word from my editor. So it's more work for me to then just sort of go back and like put it back into Scrivener and then recompile it back to, it's just, I don't know. It's way more work. Scrivener is probably good for most people, and quite honestly, when I wrote that formatting guide, that's probably 2 or 3 years old now, and at the time, Amazon was taking down a lot of books because of formatting errors, and I think this might have been even before Scrivener was sort of kicking out the Mobi file, whatever it does now that you can upload. So at the time, it was kind of like a serious issue, and that's why I developed it, because I was sitting there writing down like, okay, here's all the steps I'm going to do because I know this code will be 100% clean, and Amazon won't take my book down. And then as I was doing it, I'm like, well, you know what? I should just document this and share it with other people. And if they are in the same position I am, or they know a little bit of HTML, then this will help them. I don't know. I honestly don't know if the book's all that relevant anymore. And Steve Scott always does me a solid. He'll tweet it out every now and then, and I'll get a few sales from it, and that's cool. I don't know how relevant it is anymore, but I'll leave it up there.
No, that's cool. And I think that no matter what, it's a resource for people, and any tool that you can use to get it out there is viable, and if it works, it works. So I remember doing HTML coding back in the day, and I scream at the thought of doing it that way. But obviously, reading through how you had explained it in the book, it seems fairly simple when you're working it through MS Word. But it's I think it's just important for people to know that it doesn't matter what software you're using as long as you're getting the book to the reader.
And one of the things that reviewers have commented on that was sort of a throw-in that I didn't even think about at the time, which seems to be a pretty nice value add, is in the back of the book I have a link to you can download a template of a book formatted in HTML, and you can basically copy and paste your text into it and then compile it. So I've had a few people tell me like, wow, the book was great, or it was fine, but like having the template and then being able to work in those files and not have to create them from scratch was really helpful.
Yeah, no, I remember seeing those, and yeah, I personally didn't look into them, but I thought it was just, like I said, it's a great resource, and to those that don't have, other resources like Scrivener and stuff like that, it's a great way to learn the old-fashioned way, because it's important. It's like going off to film school and never touching a camera. It's not like you're going to become a great director once you get out of school, because you didn't have that practical experience.
Yeah, some of the basics.
Nice. Hey,
just a quick one of the other things that's been updated since then, just so everyone knows, because not a lot of people know this, but you can actually upload an EPUB now to Kindle, and it will do a clean conversion to a movie. So EPUB is generally it's generally easier to create than the movie.
Yep.
Nice. I wanted to, before we got too far in the show, because I wanted to make sure we got a chance to talk about it, a little bit about your newest project, your dark arts theater stuff that you're doing, James. So I want to give you a chance to tell everybody what that's all about.
Yeah, I'd love to. Zach is featured on a few of the issues, so he can chime in if he wants on this. The idea was, well, first of all, I'll tell you what it is. It's the way I describe it is it's a video magazine. It's not really a podcast. It's not really a show. If you imagine picking up a magazine for fans of horror and heavy metal and hard rock, but it was on YouTube, that's what it is. So it's a combination of music videos, song samples, interviews, some performance pieces. It's a mixed bag of stuff, and really it's all from my passion. It's all stuff that I love. So it's music that I listen to. It's movies that I watch. Zach was on talking about heavy metal records. David Wright was on talking about horror films. I interviewed Lisa Morton, the president of the HWA. Interviewed Andy Weir from The Martian. So there's it's just a lot of different stuff. Because I'm calling it a video magazine, it's organized by volume and issue. So I released all of Volume 1, which was 10 issues. I released those all on the same day about 5 weeks ago. And they're really intense as far as creating them. So it's not going to be a weekly thing. I'm doing it more like a television series where I'm going to drop the Netflix, like the whole series at once, and then a few months later, hopefully another one will come out. So that's what it was. Each issue is anywhere from, 30 to 38 minutes, roughly, something like that. And then what I've been doing weekly is these things called the DAT Top 3. So it's a real simple top 3 list, and it's everything from music to movies to horror novels, and they're about 3 to 5 minutes long, and I do those every Sunday or Monday, and that's sort of to fill the gap between the seasons and kind of keep people engaged. And the whole purpose of it was to really tap into the fan base. I kind of made a conscious decision over the past year that I was not going to be the writing guy. I started heading that direction with the Horror Writers Podcast, and I did the speaking at Jim Kukril's Author Marketing Live, and I was starting to go down that path, and that's fine. But there's so many more people that are way better at that than I am. And the other thing I found out is there's not a big crossover between those audiences. So, the SPP guys talk about this too. The people who watch the SPP don't necessarily buy their fiction. So I kind of made a conscious decision to kind of steer more towards the entertainment side. So whether I'm informing or entertaining, I chose to entertain. And hopefully it'll work. I don't know. It's an experiment. It's really soon. I don't know what the numbers mean. I have nothing to compare it to. So I'm going to start working on a Volume 2. I'm going to keep doing the DAT Top 3s every week. And in another 4 to 6 months, I'll kind of look back and see where I am.
I can resonate with that. Author Strong listeners don't buy my fiction either.
There you go.
Yeah, nice joke.
I wonder why that is. Yeah. Zach, you want to make any comments about your participation in that?
Oh, it sucks. It's a terrible show.
Perfect.
No, it's fun. It was a lot of fun being on there, and me and Jay talked about Pantera and Megadeth and Metallica, and it was a lot of fun, and I love the show. What'd you say?
All those good things.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun, man. It's a really good show. James did a great job with it. And yeah, I was really excited to be on. So and the top 3s, I've been emailing him and saying, how wrong he's getting them and stuff. So it's definitely creating conversation. So I question whether Glenn Danzig could kick my ass or not. So
I think he could.
No, probably. So but yeah, so it's it's really good, and if everyone should check it out. Even if you're not into horror and heavy metal and stuff, like if you're just an author and you're looking for a way to, kind of think outside the box, it's definitely worth checking out. So,
as a viewer, I really liked it. Just as someone who was not on it, James, I don't know where you found the time to put that thing together, but it's obvious that you put a lot of time into it. It's very, very high quality. It's great.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that, guys. I spent over 6 months working on those 10 issues or episodes, and that was from zero. Like, I knew nothing about lighting and camera work and set and scripting and video editing. I knew nothing. I was starting from zero, and I just decided that, you know what, I was really going to learn how to do it if I had to do it. So the only thing I didn't do was all the graphic design work, the logo and the images. I hired out. Everything else, literally everything else, I did myself. And it was hard, and it was a lot of time, but I was so into it because it's just what I'm into normally. Like, it's what I do when I'm not in front of a camera or when I'm out with my friends. We're talking about heavy metal, we're talking about movies. So, you know, it was very natural for me, and I think that's what kept driving me forward. And I think, to Zach's point, I think it can be a model. I know that, you know, romance sells really well and thrillers sell really well, but horror doesn't. I know that. So I think you got to come up with other ways to reach people, and I think having that type of production, whether you're a horror writer or maybe you write, you know, space opera. I don't know. Maybe you have a show about space opera, but I think you can take that format that I have, and you can sort of adapt it to whoever your audience is. There's nothing proprietary or secret or unique about it. It's just doing what you're really passionate about and sharing that with other people.
Well, and I think that's what, no matter what, in a blog format, those authors that people really respond to and want to get to know, that's through the medium that they use. And to be able to do it with the video format is not only modern in the sense, like, that's really how people are connecting. Like, there's so many people who are being paid by YouTube for their channels just so that way they could blab into a camera or play a video game and get their opinions on that, like a Let's Play or whatever it is. You know, no matter what, you got to kind of analyze the overall media market of where people's attentions are at, and YouTube is definitely one of them. And you gotta, if you want to really excel at YouTube itself, you got to play the game, and you have to actually, like you said, you have to learn how to do that video end of stuff, because people do expect a certain level of quality. Making a YouTube video is not as easy as it sounds, because when people watch a YouTube video, there's already a pre-installed notion of what a YouTube video is now, because the internet's been around for a while. It's old.
Yeah, and I would add too that I'm breaking many of the fundamental rules of YouTube best practices, and I don't care, because I'm not doing so, like, you know, very short stuff, very fast edits, all that kind of stuff. I know that, but I'm not doing it, and I'm not doing it on purpose, because that's not what I'm trying to accomplish. So what I'm thinking, like, if I sit down to watch VH1 Classic, would Dark Arts Theater be a show I'd like to see on there? The answer is yes, and so that's how I've designed it. And that's why the issues are 38 or 40 minutes long. And I know people are going to bail after 5 or 10. I know people are going to skip through to what they want, and that's fine. And they should do that, and I want them to do that. But I don't, you know, I'm not trying to like take advantage of the YouTube algorithm. That's just not what I'm trying to do. It's designed for video, but I'm also ripping the audio piece out, and that's up on iTunes and Stitcher. So I know that a lot of people are consuming. Yeah, a lot of people are consuming stuff, you know, on the way to work or while they're cutting the grass or whatever. So you can listen to it. It's designed for video, but you can listen to it as well.
Yeah, and I've actually enjoyed listening to it. I mean, I've obviously watched them as well, but I like listening to them. They're kind of the perfect length for my commute to work. And then, you know, it's really cool too when, like, you know, you have the songs and stuff come on, like, it's just jamming through my car speakers, and I can really listen to them instead of, you know, having to watch the video or whatever. So I stay a little more engaged with the music part of it when I'm listening to it as opposed to if I'm watching it. But that's just because I don't like sitting in front of a computer watching music videos. Some people do.
Yeah.
So.
I like good music videos. I don't like bad music videos. You know what I mean by that?
I know what you mean by that.
I have a question for that. Just kind of bring it back to self-publishing. What would you say is some of the things that you've learned from launching this that is directly applicable to books or directly applicable to self-publishers and what they can do in terms of marketing related stuff that is maybe outside of the norm or outside of just putting out books? Do you have anything to say about that?
I think it's too early for me to have any sort of grand takeaways at this point. But I can tell you, the process of creating the show, even if this was it and I walked away from it next week, the process of creating it from zero to what it is myself, I feel like I'm a better storyteller. Even it's not fiction, it's not a fiction podcast, but I feel like, sort of sitting down with this, I have a massive spreadsheet of all 10 issues and all the components, and there's probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 segments that go into all 10 issues, because each segment of the show is like maybe 10 minutes long, maybe 15 minutes long at the most. So sort of being able to like look at that and move things around and plan out each issue and then plan out the sequence, like that's storytelling. So if nothing else happened, I think I learned a lot more about sequencing and storytelling in a way that will hopefully be engaging. And even like from something very simple, like I got some great feedback from Simon Whistler's Writer's Circle about, early on I put up a pilot and I asked for some feedback, and one of the things, like I put a little, I don't know what it's called, a bumper or an intro or whatever it is in the beginning, but the first like 10 or 15 seconds of each issue tells you exactly what's going to be in it. Just that little thing alone, I think, is translating now into my fiction writing, because I'm thinking more about how quickly can I engage the reader in an authentic way. Not, it has to be authentic and it has to feed the story. But that's sort of, I think that's one way that I see right now that it's sort of affected my fiction and my marketing.
That's a great response. I think that that's what I was expecting, is that it's such a big project that you put together, and I think that's what can be applicable to writing, or applicable to putting stuff out, and not taking shortcuts, and making sure that you have a good product finished and ready to go, and just not half-assing it. I think there's a lot to be said there, because there's a lot of authors who half-ass it.
Yeah, I mean, good is debatable. I did the best I possibly could with the budget and the gear and the skill set that I had, and I didn't put it out until I had the best I could possibly do. So I'm proud of that. And it may not be good in quotes for other YouTube shows, but I don't have a production crew and a staff and everything, so it's the best I could do.
Well, but I think that's important, and everyone should start off that way, especially in self-publishing. That's how I got started as well. It's just what can I afford in terms of editing, or in terms of cover design, or in terms of things like that. You do what you can, and then as you can do more, you do more, and that's it, and rinse and repeat. And I like the fact that you did so much work beforehand on the Dark Arts Theater, and didn't put it out until it was ready, and there was a certain release model that you wanted to do, and so it's hard to do that. Like, it's hard to hold back on 6 to 7 episodes. I mean, you could equate that to writing 3-4 novels, right? And just keeping them tucked away in a drawer, sharing them with like beta readers, right? And to get feedback on them, which is what you were doing like in the Writer's Circle, and I'm sure with friends and whatnot. Right. Saying, what do you guys think? What do you guys think? What can I do to make this better? And then holding all those back until everything is 100%. Yeah. That's hard to do, and that takes a lot of discipline, and I think that's a great takeaway, if nothing else, to anyone who's trying to get started or work on a self-publishing career.
All right, so I have a question for you regarding horror fiction in general. And I actually asked you this question on the Horror Rush podcast, but when you guys did the Ask Us Anything, and Richard answered it and gave a horrible answer. So, and I hope he's watching and he sees this. I'm going to frame it in a little bit different way. So you mentioned earlier that you don't think that horror sells very well, or that it doesn't sell as well as our jobs, which is very true. I have a little bit of a theory for that in a way. When we watch, when we see, like, we watch Self-Publishing Roundtable, we watch Self-Publishing Podcasts, watch all these shows, it's constantly drilled in our heads as indies that we should write in series. if you want to make money writing series. I know as a reader of horror, I don't really like reading series. I would rather read standalones. And I know there's some indies out there who are having success doing that. Michael Brent Collins, Ian Robb Wright, Joe Hart, all these guys are having success writing a lot of standalones. And I think it's, I think in a way it's because, in a horror book, it's kind of hard to write a series because you want to kill everybody. So it kind of makes it difficult. But my question is, you have a couple of series, that are awesome, by the way, and that you've been really successful with. And I'm just curious, like, how you feel, I guess, A, how you've been successful writing series in horror, dark fantasy, and B, like, what your opinion is on series versus standalones.
Okay. I'll feel really weird if I give the same answer as Richard did, because I don't remember what he said. So I'll
tell you what he said. He said if you want to make money, write series. That was his answer. So,
all right. Well,
and I understand where he's coming from. But.
Yeah. The horror thing is kind of weird. I mean, I say horror, and in reality, I think very little of what I write is classic, true, pure horror.
I'd agree with that.
So I don't know. I'm kind of in a weird spot. Like my Portal Arcane series, my the Preda's Realm, and that series, like that. It's more dark fantasy stuff, and it's more supernatural, occult, paranormal. And so I think in that sense, like if I were writing slasher novels, I think it'd be really hard to write in series.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. There's sort of an expectation in a slasher novel or even a slasher movie of what's going to happen and how it's going to end. And if you don't do that, you're going to disappoint that core audience, which is a dumb move from a marketing standpoint. If you're writing in a genre, you better know sort of the common conventions, and you can play with them and you can stretch them, but certain ones you can't break. And so, I think for pure horror, it's probably hard to write in series. And maybe that's why I haven't felt that pinch, is because I'm not necessarily writing pure horror.
Yeah, and I could definitely see that, because since you kind of teeter on that fantasy realm, it's a lot easier to write series, because kind of what you said, like, I have a slasher novel out that I want to be a trilogy, and I'm kind of having to take the approach that kind of like the Rob Zombie, like Devil's Rejects, House of a Thousand Corpses approach, where the villains are going to be like the recurring characters in the book and not the protagonist necessarily.
Right.
So you kind of have to have a reverse thought there, and I really think that's partially why horror doesn't sell as well, because I do think it is hard to write in series, and you have to get, I mentioned some of those authors, and I think that they just get readers hooked on their work in general, and then they'll read anything they do, whether it has the same characters in it or not. So it's just it's tough. But you're in a good spot, like you said, where you do the dark fantasy stuff, so it is a little bit easier to carry a story arc over multiple books with the same protagonist and stuff.
Yeah, so, it is.
Yeah. James, I'd like to piggyback on that. So how do you handle your labels or your categories and your metadata? Because it does sound like a lot of your stuff is not perfectly aligned to a specific genre and that sort of thing. What do you do for that?
I use dark fantasy and horror as my two primary labels on all platforms, and wherever I have to categorize, it's horror and dark fantasy. So yeah, I do that. I rank on the horror list more often than I rank on any other sort of genre list. But like I'm careful too. Like horror is just such a double-edged sword. Like I call myself a horror writer and I love horror, but I don't, like, my tagline is creating dark realms, because I'm afraid, like, if I put horror in there, it's not a stigma, it's more of a pigeonhole, and I don't want to be in that. Like I want to be able to write more. I want to be able to write anything I want to write, and I feel like if I say I am just a horror writer, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way, but if I'm just a horror writer, then there's an expectation I have to write a certain kind of story.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of guys like that out there. I mean, like, everyone calls Clive Barker a horror writer, but Clive Barker's really a dark fantasy writer. He's kind of in the same boat. I mean, most of his stuff is more fantasy than it is horror, and, Stephen King, of course, Stephen King's an exception, but, he writes anything he wants. So, but
yeah,
he's still,
and I would call him horror. I would call Richard Lehman horror,
Yeah.
But it's not like everyone's Lovecraft or whatever, or
Right.
Edgar Allan Poe, or like it's hard to find the definitive classic horror nowadays, and especially with series. Like if you think about film, like classic horror films, like you got your like Nightmare on Elm Street and stuff like that. That may have had 17 movies, but I don't think everyone has seen all of them.
Right.
So if you put that like to books, like if you had like a recurring villain, say your Freddy Krueger type, how many books do you think you could actually write of that, where it's just each film he kills and he kills and he kills and he kills?
Yeah, it's formulaic, and the audience is there for that. But as a writer, I don't know. I think there are some writers who are great in a formulaic style, and they can take a genre or a convention, and they can beautifully and authentically do it in a different way 7 or 8 times. I wish I could. I can't though.
No, I'm the same way too, and that's why I truly haven't defined myself in any kind of way other than being an author who tends to write in science fiction or fantasy. But I don't think, like you said, pigeonholing does exist just within the stating what kind of genre that you write one book in. So it's hard to find an identity within these genres, especially if you're constantly being told that even if you think your book is one genre, someone is always going to tap you on the shoulder. Actually, this is dark fantasy, not horror.
Yeah.
So it's so just it's really subjective, and it's hard to define nowadays as far as what is a genre in this modern climate of writing. Maybe this would be a good time for you to talk about your Book Tracks adventure, James.
Yeah, Book Tracks. Booktrack.com, simple website. If you're an author, you really need to check it out. This is a company that's relatively new, but they're doing some really, really cool stuff. And so the basic idea of a book track is it's a book with a soundtrack. So it's not an audible book. It's not a narrated book. It's a book where you as the author, or you can hire them to do it. You can put background tracks in, music, ambient effects, sound effects. And what's really cool is when you read a book track in the reader, it has a playhead that you can set the speed. And so certain words can trigger certain sounds. So like if you have like the killers coming in and the door opens and the door squeaks, when the prose says the door opens, you can trigger a squeak to play in the soundtrack. So it's a really cool reading experience. It's really great for people who read where there's a lot of noise, or in cafes, buses, bus stops, offices, or if you like to read like to soft instrumental music. Book tracks are really cool, and this company is growing fast. They're really innovative. They're getting into classrooms. They're doing education pieces so teachers can have their students make book tracks from like classics that are in the public domain, and it allows you to be really creative. And as an author, you can go crazy with it. You can spend hours and hours doing it. And a great way to get into a book track is to do a short story. So if you're an author and you have a short story, go to Book Track. You upload the text, and then you can go in and play with it, and you can make it free. You can make it. You can sell it. It's really cool, and it doesn't. I'm sort of catching some of the comments here. I think someone asked how much is it. It doesn't cost the author anything, and you can set the book to be free. So it's another sort of great marketing place. And like I said, they're doing some really cool stuff now. So if you're not familiar with them, you should definitely check them out.
That sounds very cool.
Booktrack.com.
Yeah, I got my Book Track shirt on.
Pimp
I'm
it.
not an affiliate. I'm not being paid. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah, right.
He's not a whore. He's just a slut.
I was about. Hey,
That's
you said
right.
I was about to call him a whore, but
That's
No,
good.
they're genuinely good people. Like I've I've been talking to them for years, and I was one of the first indie authors to get on their platform and try it out. So we have a really genuine relationship, and I can honestly say that they're good people and it's a great company. And if you're an author, you definitely need to check them out.
Nice. Do we have any questions off the site? Somebody been keeping up with things?
I think that I think Michelle had a question.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask if that was expensive, the book tracks thing.
Well, you can pay them to produce one for you, and that I don't know what their rates are, but I would recommend you start with a short story and just do it yourself. It really I mean, you can do like a 500-word short story. It won't take you long to figure it out. It's fun. It's fun making them too. Like if you're really into audio, it's a lot of fun.
Nice. Question from the site, Xavier?
Yeah. So this one's an editing question. So I'm not sure what your process is, Jay. So maybe we'll get anyone to fill in on this one. But the question is just what's the best way to hack through that first round of the edit? The person says that they had their initial draft printed and bound, but it's such a large document, it's so overwhelming to even think about editing it. So how do you, I guess, make that first trek into editing?
Very carefully. No, I'm kidding. This is like asking someone how to make pizza. You're gonna get a billion responses, and if you end up with pizza, then they're all right. So rather than saying I know the way to do it, I'll answer the question the way I do it. I blast through a first draft without self-editing, without thinking too much about it. I try and hit my word count, and I leave myself notes for the next day. I don't go back and look at the stuff I wrote the day before. I just keep moving forward until I get the first draft done. And then the second draft is my most enjoyable part of the writing process because I already have a sort of a lump of clay, and now I get to really form it, and I get to shape it, and that's what I love the most. So I try and get through that first draft as fast as possible. I do it in Scrivener. I print it out. Yes, I do kill trees. Sorry. I print it out. I sit down with a red pen on the couch, and I block out however many hours I need to go through it in one sitting. And I basically just I read it as a first read as a reader, and I'll make very minimal notes in that first run through, and then I'll go through that paper version again with more significant notes, and then I'll bring that paper version back to my computer, and I'll sit down and put the revisions into Scrivener. I do that, and I revise 2 or 3 times, sometimes 4 or 5 times on paper, probably another 2 to 3 times on the computer, and at that point, I'll send it to my editor.
Interesting. I have a question to kind of piggyback off that. What's the experience like? Like I know that you, of course, you wrote a novel with our mutual buddy Dan Padavona, and great book, Shadow Witch. You guys should check it out.
Thanks.
But I know that he wrote the first draft, and then you did the editing, correct? Like you did the second drafting.
Yes.
So what? I don't know. Like, did you have to approach that any different? Like, was it stranger because you hadn't read it yet, or you didn't, because you didn't write it, or I mean, did you have to change the way you did it, your process? That Shadow Witch was one of my favorite projects ever of anything, like writing, music. Part of it is because Dan Padavona is one of the greatest guys I've ever met. He's an incredibly kind and genuine person, and so awesome. Writing with him was really a lot of fun. But what started is I asked him at one point, I said, what's your favorite part of the writing process? And I said, don't think about it, just tell me exactly what's your gut response. I love the first draft. He's like, the first draft is my favorite thing to do. And so when I read that, I was like, all right, buddy, we're going to write something because the second draft is my favorite thing to do. So for me, it's hard to explain. Like we came up with story beats together. We didn't outline, but we had some story beats. We had maybe a page and a half of the 3-act structure. And then we both agreed on it, like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then
and then Dan ran with it, and he sent me, and he would send me like pieces at a time, and I was kind of coming up behind him, editing it.
Okay.
But when I was doing that, that's where I was totally in the zone. It was like I had a hand in creating the story, but I was starting at the second draft instead of the first. And Dan is a great writer, and so it was all, I was like reading it like a fanboy and then trying to revise it at the same time. It was a blast.
Nice.
That does sound like fun.
Well, if you like second drafts over first drafts, then definitely.
I like the second draft better, personally. It's less intimidating.
I think so. I think the first draft is really intimidating because you're staring at a blinking cursor or a blank page or a blank paper, or every day you're sitting down and you're like worried about hitting the word count or whatever. I don't know. Like, I still enjoy it, but I think it's more enjoyable for me in the second draft.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, I
prefer
like
the
it.
final draft myself.
Ava asked on the site, Jay, a little bit more about your process in general. Even though you're starting to kind of dive into this, how do you balance all your various projects? And she also would really like to know, do you use outlines or not, or how much outlining do you do?
I don't do outlining, but I do more plotting than I used to. So when I first started out as a pure pantser, and then as I worked more on my craft, I found it helpful to sort of have these mileposts within the story. So I still don't fully outline because I feel like there's a lot of stuff in my writing that comes out, and if I had outlined it and wrote directly to the outline, I would probably miss some of that spontaneous good stuff. So I'm sort of in the middle now, but I'm not a pantser, I'm not a plotter, I'm kind of in the middle. What was the I think I skipped the other part of that question. What was the other part of that question?
Yeah, the idea of your work balance, because you got lots of projects. How do you find all your time? What do you got some good organizing things?
And a family and a job. You got a lot of things going on.
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about the creative pursuits alone, and this is gonna shock some people. Like, I hate goal setting, and I know like everyone tells you should set goals and I hate goal setting. I'm more opportunistic. So what I do is I look at a calendar year and I look at the first 3 months and I sort of decide optimally what, if nothing else happens, what would I be working on? So I don't do nothing. Like I guess I do set goals in a way. I set some minimal goals of sort of what I want, but then what I do is I leave myself room to completely cut free of that. So I'll give you an example. I was working on a novel in January or February, and I was going to publish it in the spring, and it's still not published. And the reason it's not published is because J.R. Rain asked me to open his Kindle world, his Vampire for Hire Kindle world, with a novella. So, like, if I had set goals, I would have been like, no, I'm working on my novel now, and I'll get to you in April, whatever. So what I basically did is I set aside what I was working on, and I was like, absolutely, JR, I will definitely open your Kindle world. And I worked on that for 6 weeks or so. So I'm kind of opportunistic, and I like to have some variety. So at any given point, I'm first drafting, I'm working on Dark Arts Theater, I'm working on a collaboration. Zach and I are talking about something. I think we got something in the works we're going to unleash on the world at a certain point. I like having that variety. So for me, I know it's probably a lot of people are probably better off if they take one project and see it straight through to the end. So I'm not saying that that's not a good thing to do, but for me, I like to have some variety in my creative pursuits. I'm sorry, I'm missing a lot of bubble questions and comments. If you guys are going to have to speak them to me.
It's okay. So there's a question from the site that I'll ask because Michelle wants to keep her mic muted. Does Jay ever worry about audience or market when writing / coming up with stories, or does he just say fuck it and roll with it?
He says fuck it and he rolls with it.
Yeah, this is a question from Jay Chastain.
Yeah, I know. Michelle's afraid of me, so that's why she won't unmute it and ask me anyways. I can't come through the screen at you, Michelle. It's all right.
I really was.
She's intimidated by James. I told him you said
I
that,
know,
so.
because then he was like, ha ha ha, guess what Zach said. Immediately.
No, the reason I don't, like, I've had this question asked to me in different ways, like, about people have said, like, how'd you come up with your branding? I'm like, I didn't. It's just who I am. So I take that same approach in my creative pursuits. Like, if I want to write a vampire story, I write a vampire story. If I want to write a post-apocalyptic story, that's what I write. I don't go so far off the rails that it alienates my core audience. Like, I'm not going to write romance. It's just not going to happen. And not because I don't like romance or I don't think it sells. It's because I'm not passionate about it, so I'm not going to write it. So mostly everything I do or everything I write is still in the ballpark, and that's why I don't worry too much about it.
I think I like that for just good of general advice. If you're true to yourself, right, then good things you'll make good art. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not selling a book. I'm not selling a record. I'm not selling a show. Really what I'm selling is me. And that will always be the case. If you're creative, that's what you're selling. Like one of the mistakes, it's not a mistake, but one of the things that I see happen that I think authors might regret is they come out with a book, let's say a first book, and then they buy a domain name for that first book, and that's their main website. And that's fine at first, but what happens when book 2 comes out, book 3 comes out, and so on? So I think that's an example of one way you can sort of box yourself in, even if you do it in your creative pursuit. Like if you call yourself a writer right now, what about 5 years from now? Like what if something else comes up and you're not writing novels anymore, you're doing whatever this other thing is, and you've boxed yourself in as a writer. So I think ultimately the only thing we all know for sure is as long as we're breathing, we are the brand as indies, and so that's sort of where my focus is.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. There's lots of people who I know that when I was working in the film career who will buy up my book on paperback just because they're friends of mine. Then they want to see what I'm doing now as opposed to making short films. So like, don't think that all these little things that you've tried at do not amount up into something bigger.
Yeah, good point.
And no matter what, like like you said, you are the brand. It's not the one book that's gonna ultimately make you, because unless that book immediately gets sold to Hollywood and then you're never heard of again, you're probably going to be doing something else with your life, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's ever going to be another J.D. Salinger.
Yes.
That's it. Like, I don't know. I think we're all, in this day and age, things change so fast that I think it's hard for us to know 5 months or 5 years down the road what this landscape is going to look like, or even what the reading experience is going to look like. I mean, we know for sure people want to be entertained and don't want to be informed, but short of that, we just really don't know.
Good point. Darren Waremouth left a question for us from across the pond. Jay, do you feel like you need an anchor in reality for your stories?
Well, first of all, what's up, Darren? Do I need an anchor? Yeah, I think most of my stories do have an anchor in reality. All of my stuff is based in quote unquote the real world. So it is, I write a lot about my own experience. So I have stories that are set in Cleveland, in Pittsburgh, in Nashville, in New York, places where I've lived. I have scenes taken from, restaurants and coffee shops I've been to, experiences I've had. So I think if that's what Darren means, I think that would be the anchor in reality. I don't think I have anything that's like way out there as far as the world building or the setting goes.
Cool. All right. Anybody else got a question that we didn't hit yet?
I think maybe just a quick one for all those out there that are authors who just want to be collaborating with other authors and do box sets or collaborative works. What would you say is what are some of the ways that you can connect with other authors and seek out collaborative efforts like that?
The single thing that worked for me that I believe is the the best way is to offer without expectation. It's that simple. If you want to quote unquote network and you want to do it in a way that doesn't feel sleazy or weird, then find out what your skill is and then offer it. And that's going to be different for everyone. So maybe you're a great editor, maybe you're a graphic designer, maybe you're a book formatter, whatever you have that's beyond the writing, find it, hone it, and then offer that to somebody else, and without sort of expecting them to return the favor. And I think that's the best. That's how I did all the collaborations. That's how I've built most of my relationships. Is I kind of start out as fans and or admiring someone, and it's hard to go wrong that way. Everybody wins, and it's not transactional. You just offer it and know that the universe will bring it back to you.
Perfect.
You're going to
Good
put
life advice.
the back of the book, so you can just call him and ask him if he wants to write a book with you.
That's true. I do have my phone number in the back of every book.
Just in case.
How many times have people called you, actually? Do you get a lot of calls besides creepy ones like Zach?
Well, once I blocked Zach, once I blocked his number, my calls went down considerably. No, it's not as many as you would think, and I don't know if it's me. Like, Michelle's giving me a complex now. Like, I'm thinking maybe people find me really scary and so they don't call. But
No.
No, okay, because she's scared of me. But I think too. I think there's a certain level of intimidation. People think that indie authors are like Stephen King or James Patterson, and they're sitting like in a mansion with a pool and like security forces and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John asked if it was because he wrote horror, and I was like, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's just who he is.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the case. Like, I'm a regular guy pretty much, except for the goat sacrifices on Saturday nights. So I'm pretty normal.
No, I'm terrified again.
Yeah. So.
I actually find it interesting how often when readers write me, how often they say, "I can't believe you wrote me back."
Yeah.
I'm just like, well, why wouldn't I write you back? Like, you just told me you read my book and you really enjoyed it, and you're taking the time to write me. So yeah. So it's funny that people.
Yeah, I agree. I think people just are a bit intimidated, and they're maybe afraid someone's going to pick up the phone if they call.
I just want to leave a message. I
don't want to talk to you.
I'm just gonna leave you a voicemail.
Is this Jay Thorn? Yes. Hang on.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was intense.
Very, very true. Nice. Well, it is the top of the hour, and I want to say thank you to Jay and to everybody, because it was a really good conversation.
That was fun.
Yes. I don't think we missed the feed for me has been a little bit slow tonight. I don't know if anybody else is having that problem. But just making sure I'm not missing any questions. If Xavier, you give it a glance over one more time too, just to make sure we didn't miss anybody. I'd like to get those answered if we can. So, Jay, what do you got coming up? You got any releases coming? What's and where do you like to direct people to find you if they're interested in reading your stuff and find all your stuff?
Yeah, my jthorn.net is my homepage, and everything funnels through there. So if you go to jthorn.net, you'll be able to find everything and anything I'm involved in. I have probably, depending on how I count them, I have 4 co-writing projects in certain stages right now. So I don't have anything that's going to be coming out in the very near future. The J.R. Rain Vampire Apocalypse story came out 5 weeks ago, so that's the newest thing I have out. That's the story in his Kindle world. And then probably by the end of the year, I expect to have, I said, 3 to 5 co-written projects published.
Oh, wow. Well, you'll have a busy end of the year then, for sure.
It'll be fun, yeah. Holiday season.
Nice. And Zach, I know it's not your show, but I do want to give you a quick little plug. You just had a release. Tell the folks about that.
Yeah, I just had a novel come out this week, a standalone called Lines of the Devil, a horror novel. So it's kind of like horror, suspense, dark fantasy. So.
And I'm reading it right now, so no spoilers, Zach.
Oh, brother.
Nice.
Give me the worst blurb I get ever.
How does it end, Zach?
Yeah. What exactly happens in chapter 7? Just a random chapter.
I wish I could tell you. I have no idea.
You can't remember.
I'm already on to the next thing. So, and I'm trying to think about the book me and Jay are going to write because we have a meeting about that Saturday. So I'm like, yeah.
Nice.
But no, it's just a suspense horror novel about a tattoo artist that has some crazy stuff happen to him, and it's got some demon possession stuff in it, and it's a lot of fun. So
cool. So guys, check that out. All right. Well, again, thank you guys. Thank all of you. Thank you, Matt. Even though I know you're working on your chords, but yeah.
I'm not throwing my guitar. Hey, so everyone knows, because people like you, Wade, right? So you did an interview with us. So I'll plug it. I told you to plug it, but you didn't plug it.
I'm
an interview with us
Yeah.
on Author Strong podcast. It's coming out on Saturday and Sunday. You got the whole weekend.
I thought this was Author Strong.
Sorry.
That's the only way I could get Zach on here.
Oh, whatever. I like the show better.
Ooh.
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
the internet.
I love Matt so much.
I can handle it.
Yeah.
I got a thick skin from all my writings.
Matt's gonna go cry now.
You guys are crazy.
Yeah, I got to turn off the camera. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you want to hear,
Stay tuned tomorrow for Matt's short fiction structure part 8. Coming out tomorrow morning.
Part 8 comes out like in a week. It's just part 3 tomorrow.
nice. See, we're just such great friends. We can kid each other. It's awesome. Yeah. So, but again, thanks everybody. Thanks for all the live listeners. We appreciate your comments and stuff. And of course, because Matt would tell you to, go leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. We are also available on Stitcher. I know I had a listener last week talked about, well, I don't use iTunes. So you can check us out on Stitcher. And of course, you can always go to our YouTube channel and see our smiling faces and watch what Michelle does when she's not talking on YouTube. So check us out there as well.
You're a terrible person.
I know. I try to be. Thank you very much. So check us out next week. We'll have somebody else on. Hell, we might even drag Zach back here again. You never know.
Zach.
No, we got John Monk next week.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, that'll be a good episode. Cool.
Yeah. So yeah.
When is there a bad episode? Come on.
Well.
There was this one with we had Zach Bohannon on.
Yeah, this one with me on was freaking awful.
Chewbacca was in the background. It was weird. But anyway.
What else was Paul was on?
Xavier, do you have anything to say? I tried to do a Brit. That really did work very well, but that's okay.
Yes. Good night, internets.